Okay, this is Veterans News, a production of the United Veterans Organization of Nassau County, with the participation of Suffolk County. My name is Ed Allman. I'd like to thank Erica Bradley for the use of her studio facilities here in Lake Success, and for the use of Mike Peters for his technical support. Our guest today is Richard I knew I'd screw it up. Richard Acritelli, a 9-year veteran of the Army Reserve and the Air National Guard, and currently an adjunct professor at Suffolk County Community College. And I just learned that you're a high school teacher?
Yeah, at Rocky Point High School.
At Rocky Point High School.
Yep.
Okay, we'll talk about a military museum in the Rocky Point Railroad Station and other interesting stuff with our guest. But first, here's a few comments about a few veterans who died recently. Altus Rickenbacker of Glen Head was an Army vet who served during the Korean War era, and he served in Greenland. He worked in operation known as Blue Jay. Joseph Bakakia of Hempstead was a 99-year-old Navy veteran who lost a son. This is pretty terrible. He lost a son on a peace mission in Baghdad in 1983 and outlived another son who was also a captain. Both sons were Marines. Lou Levin of Levittown was a Marine who I knew. He was the past national commander of the Marine Corps League, and I'm wearing the hat today for Lou. Rick Roskill of Garden City was a Naval Reserve veteran who served in the submarine forces in his 20s and 30s. Michael Calder of Northport was a Marine, and the exciting thing about him was he met his wife during his time in the service, and he knew her for 61 years. William Candy of Glen Cove died at 97 years young, and he was in Japan at the end of World War II, and he became an attorney. Ralph Savastano of North Babylon served in the Marine Corps from 1960 to 64. Louis Oleg was from East Northport, a proud Navy vet who also became a lawyer. Charles Hacking from Centerport enlisted in the Navy, then attended the Naval Academy, but he served as an Air Force officer. Lastly, Anthony Bogatora of Hicksville was a Vietnam War veteran who was also veteran of the U.S. Army. If you know a veteran who died recently and you would like to have their names mentioned here, please email me at mardiv1@optimum.net. That's mardiv1@optimum.net. Now it's time for our guest, Richard Acritelli. Okay. You were 9 years in the military?
Yeah, yes, sir. I went in on July 5th, 1994. We went into Fort Hamilton, Brooklyn. I did my processing in there. I wanted to go into the reserves first to see how well I did in college. If things didn't work out in college, I would have gone back active duty. As things worked out, it worked out for the best. We're here in Lake Success. I ended up serving at Fort Totten in Bayside, Queens, for the 77th ARCOM Division, and I hauled jet fuel, JP-8, up and down the eastern seaboard as a young man. So,
how did you haul that jet fuel? Trucks? Or
yeah, it was all
driver?
trucks and tractor trailers and stuff like that. And a lot of the older sergeants and officers said, if this was a couple of years before, in the Cold War, we would have trained with a lot newer equipment. But it was a great experience. There was guys I served with that they were the first reserve unit to Iraq during the first Gulf War. So I was very fortunate with a lot of the men and women I served with, and I'm still friends with them today.
Yeah, how did you end up with the Air National Guard?
What ended up happening was I was at Totten, and myself and 50 other guys got transferred up to Fairfield, Connecticut. and we weren't told. We came in and they called it, like at that time, a Tier 1 unit. So I lived at that time out on eastern Long Island,
Right.
and I was driving around both times. I'd stay at my buddy's place up at Iona in New Rochelle, but it just got to be too much. So then I went out to West Hampton Beach, and there was a change in command up in Fairfield, and they allowed me, because they realized I wasn't from around there, and that I was from eastern Long Island. It was a long ride. There was a lot to it. So I ended up going out to West Hampton Beach to the 106. The 106 itself is like the United Nations of military components. You have guys that are either Marines or Coast Guard or Army or Air Force. So we all kind of came from different backgrounds, and it was really it was a good situation. I ended up doing 9 years in a row. Typically, some guys will do maybe 2 years active. They'll get situated in their civilian jobs and then come back. So I just kept on going with my time. I always kind of regret leaving. I was a staff sergeant. I had some time. And, at that time, it was like a family decision. So, but also at that time, I was going for my education. And I was at Stony Brook University as a history major, and then education for teaching social studies.
Right.
So, and that's what I do now. I teach American history at Rocky Point High School. I'm going on my 24th year. I teach at Suffolk Community College. I've been there for almost 15 years as a adjunct professor of early and modern American history. And then I teach graduate and in-service classes for the New York Center for Teacher Development. So I teach teachers.
Sounds like you have a lot of jobs.
Yeah. I'd like to travel and do all kinds of different things, but I have 3 girls, 3 daughters, and nice home, and my wife and everything, and so it
What's
gets
your
busy.
wife's name?
Janet.
Okay.
So she's
Hi, Janet.
She works for the alumni department at Stony Brook University. She's got a senior position there, and so we're around education a lot and national service. She does
Very
a
good.
lot for the Long Island Veterans Home in Stony Brook.
Really?
Yeah. So she'll volunteer there.
Right.
Yeah, she gives a big smile, and she understands the history and the service and the good that goes with it. So.
The Long Island home out in Stony Brook, they almost saved my life.
Yeah,
I spent 3 months there under therapy for a stroke that I had about 12 years ago.
They
But
do
very
some
nice.
very good work there.
Yeah.
Excellent work, and
Very good. You're with what VFW post?
VFW post 6249 in Rocky Point. We're a very, very productive post. Just over the last couple of years alone, we've been doing the PTSD run for Joseph Dwyer.
Who's Joseph Dwyer?
Joseph Dwyer was a soldier that was in Iraq, who was the iconic picture of him holding on to the child.
Oh, right.
And he ended up dying of PTSD.
Ah.
We did a big statue of him in Rocky Point as well. Our political support, Councilwoman Jane Bonner, had taken this piece of property out there that was an old bar, and it was a total eyesore, and they made it into a town park, and we put the statue of him.
Really?
So it's like a nice veteran square.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the, it's a very rare statue to have him. People know the picture and they know the story, but that might be one of the first major statues in the country.
Is it the statue of the picture?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, of Joseph Dwyer.
And where is that?
It's in Rocky Point on the corner of Broadway and 25A.
Broadway,
Yeah.
25A.
Yeah, and 25A. So it's a beautiful statue.
Right.
That Fricke Memorial had done for us years ago.
Very good.
We've also, we do a Wounded Warrior golf outing. We've raised just about $300,000 since 2008.
You told me about that before the show, but I didn't hear the $300,000.
Yeah, we have guys from the first time that we played out in Long Island National, out in Riverhead, to today, that they're very, very patriotic.
Really?
To that golf outing. They're very loyal to it. At one time, we had one of the best raffles on Long Island.
And what do you do with that money?
We try to support veterans that have fallen on maybe hard times out by us, that are wounded warriors. We'll send them on trips. We'll build ramps to their houses. If they need a hot water heater or oil burner, we'll do that. Financially, we'll support them.
Wow.
And we've been doing that for the last 15 years. So that's going to be at the Rock Golf Course in Wading River this year. So
Wow.
it's a great outing. It really is. Our commander, Joe Cognatori, Vietnam vet. He was in Cambodia at the very end of the war. He's one of those guys where we'll grab onto an idea, we'll run
Right.
with it, and we'll always do the best we can. It's a very, very productive post. We have some guys I'd like to put a shout out to. Is Lieutenant Dan Guida. We call him Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump,
Right.
And Gary Susick, Pat Biglin, and also a couple of the Vietnam vets that are in the post that are also in the Suffolk County chapter, Vietnam vets. Their head, Richie Kitson,
Sure.
Clarence Simpson, and Mel Cohen. Those guys do an unbelievable job. The Vietnam vets did not get treated well at all when they came home.
Yeah.
Their mission is to make sure that these guys today are treated with respect and gratitude and everything, and they keep on going. They're unbelievable. They're a great group. So.
Yeah. Your post sounds very special. Most posts are, there's only a few members that go to the meeting, 10, maybe 12. They don't do very much, but you sound like your organization does a lot.
The organization, we're led by a bunch of older men, and these guys, they work hard every day. They not only work hard for the nation, but for our local community and the state. And, they're just hardworking guys that, they love that camaraderie of being with each other and doing something that's worthwhile, something that's extremely important. Local and national service it never grows old.
Tell me the name of your post again.
VFW Post 6249.
6249.
Fisher Humans Post
in Rocky Point.
Yeah. So.
Okay. If somebody wants to join that post, who do they contact?
It would be Joseph Cognatori, and they could call 631-873-8272.
Good.
And if they have any questions, Joe, he's one of those guys that if he doesn't know the information, he'll find out and get right back to you.
Very good.
So.
Very good. So tell me about the museum that you started.
I'm the curator for the museum. We were given the building by Landmark Properties, Mark Bache. It was the old Thurber land out in Rocky Point. It was an old Thurber lumber site, and that's where the old railroad station had gone there. So they had the railroad station at the site of this lumber yard. Part of the museum is based on that old railroad station, and then there's a new building itself. So what we're going to do, because we've had such a huge outpour for this museum since we've opened on December 7th, is
you opened up in last year, December 7th?
This past December 7th. And we're right now working on enclosing the old train station itself. Since December 7th of this previous year, I'll be sitting there on a weekend. One weekend, a man brought in Vietnamese currency, South Vietnamese currency. Another lady brought in.
I have that.
Yeah,
I still have some currency from South Vietnam.
It's something. We have that next to the Saddam money in our museum there. Another week, a lady brought in uniforms from the Cuban Missile Crisis. This past week, from Guadalcanal, we got a walking stick that's also a weapon that was made by
the Japanese.
It was made by the natives in the Solomon Islands and Guadalcanal itself, and we used some of them as scouts to determine where the Japanese was, and you could see the decorative marks. So we have unbelievable stuff, and even though it's closer towards eastern Suffolk County, we get calls from in here in Nassau County, anywhere from here in Lake Success, all the way out towards Southold and Montauk.
How often are you open? What are your hours?
We're open on weekends, and then I'm there during the week. So if anybody would like to come down, all they would have to do is just give me a call. I live in Wading River, and I'm 5 minutes away. So, so the museum goes from the local history here, and then we have national history from the Revolutionary War all the way up until today.
I saw some photographs of somebody in uniform, in a military uniform.
Yeah, that was our D-Day ceremony that we did last week, and I guess it's the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So we actually had a lady right around the corner here. Her father was at Camp Ritchie, which was an intelligence and interrogation camp that trained how to do that sort of thing outside of Washington, D.C. and Maryland.
Camp Ritchie?
Camp Ritchie there. And then he invaded the Aleutian Islands, and then a year later he went to Normandy, and then 6 weeks later after that he was taken prisoner of war. So she came out and spoke about her dad and stuff like that, and it was a great ceremony. We had Omaha Beach recreated. We had the Long Island Veterans Military Club come out and bring a nice Jeep with them. The following week they did a convoy out of there with like 10 Jeeps and a 5-ton truck and stuff like that. So we're starting to roll with the museum now, you know. So
and you're open every weekend?
Every weekend. If I'm not there, then somebody else will be there.
Good.
And we have a little of everything. We have weapons from 1816, from really the old American Republic.
How did you get that?
We have a weapons dealer that we go through, Vin Coppola. He's out of Lynbrook, or actually Malvern, and he's been very fair with selling us some older antique weapons. We also have some weapons that people had in their homes. You know, people have things in a box or they hold on to, but when it's in a garage or, you know, in a basement, you know, they kind of realize they wanted to do a little bit more good there, you know. So we have a lot of great stuff. We have some really, really interesting pieces, and a lot of it's local.
Good.
A lot of it's very local. So, but they always say, you know, Long Island is a strong part of American history, and that goes the same for military history as well. So,
we have our own museum at the Eisenhower Park Tower.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we have a lot to learn about museums.
There's no guidebooks for it. You do the best you can. You learn. You talk to people. You ask questions. Sometimes you make mistakes, and that's how you learn. And you're always hustling doing it. You know, there's always something to be done with it itself there. So it's something I'm very proud of. We raised $70,000 from April to December. We did a huge Veterans Wall of Honor also.
You made $70,000 for the museum?
Yeah, for the museum. Everything goes back into it. So the more money we could raise, money is power. You can get better things for the museum itself. And we have a Veterans Wall of Honor that has over 500 names on it, etched in black granite, that we're expanding also.
The Walls of Honor
is right outside our museum.
Any veteran?
Anybody, and any place in America.
Very good.
It could be a reservist or guardsman, or somebody was at, you know, Omaha Beach, or, you know, World War I. We have Revolutionary War veterans that are up there, and people today that are, you know, still serving today.
Very good.
So it's a good thing. It's growing.
Nassau County has a Wall of Honor too. We have several thousand on it now.
Very good. We're expecting for it to be like that there. We're already in our next phase.
Very good.
And, you know, it's a very, very good thing. So,
very good.
But am I allowed to say a couple of thank yous?
Sure.
We have some construction guys, Jimmy Cook, Jim Connell, who really helped us out, Joe Naples, Mr. Mark Bache, Landmark Properties, who donated the building to us. Just a great, great guy, you know, true patriot, you know. He really believes in history and, you know, making sure that it's there, not only for this generation, for generations down the road.
I notice you read a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You're in a few local papers and you have a few columns.
Yeah, I was never really good at math and science in school or anything like that. I always loved history. It was one of those things I could always remember. I'm not always the most patient guy, but for research, I'm very patient with that. I did research at the Modern Military Archives for A huge paper I did on General George S. Patton when I was at Stony Brook University. I looked at the Slappin incident. I looked at the liberation of the concentration camps, the reports of German generals who, Patton was a controversial guy, but, he was, Marshall and Eisenhower's pit bull. He was the one who either caused the bleeding or stopped the bleeding from happening in Europe. I'm writing right now a book on Ulysses S. Grant. I've done about 2,000 pages on him. And I write for the local newspaper for me out there as a Times-Beacon Record. So that roughly goes from almost Riverhead to Huntington. And then the South Shore Press, which is on the South Shore part of Suffolk County.
Right.
And then I just did a story on a man who turned 100 years old, who ended up being up in the air at the same time that the atomic bomb was dropped in the lower part of Japan. And he said you could see the mushroom cloud. And he just turned 100 years old. So, I very much enjoyed the writing. It's something.
What's his name, the 100-year-old?
His name was Jim Morris there. So, and he just a very, very interesting man there. So he did not go home after the war. He was ferrying enemy soldiers from Korea back to Japan. And he was like a flight mechanic. He was on the aircraft with them. And the guy, just great guy, still independent, still cooking for himself.
Very good.
Funny guy, and so on. He was from in here in Seacliff. And it was very, very interesting to speak with him there. Very interesting, so.
Very good. So. Maybe we'll find him and get him on the show.
Yeah, great guy. Very, members of the greatest generation. What do they say? There's about 100,000 World War II veterans that are still surviving. The sad part is these veteran groups sooner or later are going to leave us.
Yeah.
And, our students, kids like I have in school, in high school and college, they need to know the sacrifices that our local and national veterans have made. It's something that it's immensely important there. So.
I noticed you wrote about PTSD.
Yeah. I mean, I have students that I can remember coaching them and having them in class, and they went off right away. And these guys are corrections officers now, police officers, and I have one student. His dad came home from Iraq and surprised him and his sister in elementary school, and then he went in as well. So here are young guys with their whole life ahead of them that are dealing with a lot of times this silent issue, the silent concern.
Right.
We have our head of our PTSD run, Frank Caselta. He's a Vietnam War vet. He was a combat medic. He went out with the scout teams and stuff, the recon teams, and for the rest of his life, he dealt with PTSD.
Really?
So it's something that doesn't leave these guys.
You mentioned the PTSD run.
Yeah.
What is the run about?
That's in Rocky Point, in the Rocky Point Conservation Area. We do a 5K run that's on the roads. That's in the conservation area itself, and then it finishes up at Rocky Point High School. We've had probably about 125 people for that run over the last 3 years each year, and it's grown. It's going to be something where it's a tough run. It's through the hills, and they call it the camels. And
the camels?
Yeah, that's the hills in the Rocky Point Conservation Area. So imagine you carrying a big rucksack and going through these hills, right? Now you're seeing kids and adults competitively running through it, and they always say those are some tough hills, but they're glad they do, and then they look forward to it as well. So it's a good thing. It's like the golf outing. A little patriotism, a little athletics.
Yeah.
People kind of like that combination itself there, so it's a good thing. So.
You also wrote about D-Day and Pearl Harbor. What did you say about that?
I've written several stories over the last couple of years on both Pearl Harbor and D-Day. I try to always look for like a different angle. The last couple of stories I did was on Eisenhower and his decision with D-Day. It was interesting with Eisenhower was that if he waited on D-Day, the window was closing because of the weather.
Right.
They couldn't wait any longer. So he couldn't go on the 4th, but on the 5th they said the window will be open for a day or two. And Eisenhower was a 5-star general, and but he was a pretty regular guy. He was one of the best presidential athletes that we've ever had.
Really?
He played minor league baseball under an assumed name. He was a great football player at West Point.
Eisenhower?
Eisenhower was there.
I never heard that about Eisenhower. Never thought about that.
He coached a lot of football. So when he spoke to the airborne that was going into Normandy, you know, his thing was, where is there a guy from Kansas, Abilene, his own hometown? And, you know, smoke him if you got him and everything else. And it was an interesting thing in the story I just did was the meteorologists, they were in Ireland seeing where the weather was coming from. And he always had like that grin. And he goes, we had better weather people than the Germans did. Because they didn't think that Rommel went home to see his wife. They thought the weather was so bad that Eisenhower would never make that gamble. And they didn't know it was Normandy. They always thought it was going to be Calais, which was a huge blunder on the Germans' part there. And Eisenhower, brilliant figure, but you know, he was he was like a Grant. You knew who was in command. He wrote clear, common sense orders. They were very strong writers. You never knew, you never doubted who was in command. And they understood what the common soldier did and what their jobs were and their roles were all the way up. So very interesting. I met his grandson a couple years back, and he was a regular guy and an interesting figure there. So
very good. I think that's about the time, all the time that we have. But if you have a veteran that you want mentioned, just give me a call. On camera 1, we have Tony Hartman's not here. Jim Quirk isn't here. Who's out there? Mike Felix, you're here. Come on up, Mike. Come up behind the camera. We have two students out there. Where are they? Come on up. Come on up on camera. Each of you. Very good. Come on up. Oh, boy. Okay.
We're all here, Ed.
Good. Thank you, Eric. I'm glad you're here. I hope you had a good time. We'll see you again next month. And thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Being here with us.
Thank you.
And teaching us.
My pleasure, Rich.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay.
Job well done.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
here are some